Grants are an awesome source of funding for the public, private, and nonprofit industries. They're used to fund things like cancer research, education, space travel, homeless prevention, and environmental cleanup. Unlike investments, grants are non dilutive, which means you don't have to give up an ownership stake in your organization or company. And unlike a loan, the money doesn't have to be repaid. Grants come with a lot of hidden costs. And if you don't understand where the costs can creep in, you can actually lose money on your grant funding. You're probably thinking, how in the world are my grants costing me money? Well, let's take a look at the costs associated with each stage of the grant cycle. Step 1. Finding grant opportunities. There are 900 federal grant programs, 50 states, 36,000 municipalities, 86,000 foundations, and thousands of businesses, universities, and religious institutions that award grants, and no single grant database in which to find them. Heck, thousands of grants aren't even listed in a database, which is why it takes up to 3 days to find a single grant you qualify for a cost of $720. Step 2. Writing a grant proposal. Writing a grant can take between 30 hours for a simple foundation grant up to 120 hours for a complex federal grant. Some grant seekers have in-house grant writers, but many outsource this work to professionals who charge up to $150 an hour. No, the grant writers aren't the problem, and yes, the experienced ones are worth every penny. This means that writing a grant can cost between $600 for a foundation grant written in-house up to a whopping $18,000 for a federal grant written by an expert-level grant writer. Step 3. Managing the grant post-award. After you receive a grant, the bulk of the work begins. The 100+ hours to find and write a grant was nowhere near the bulk of the work. Grant terms can span months or even years, and during that time, you are required to manage the budget, tasks, deliverables, documents, associated programs, and outcome metrics. If you're like most grant recipients, you manage all of these things with spreadsheets or siloed data platforms, which means that managing all of these tasks costs an average of 20% of your grant. Step 4. Preparing a grant report. Some funders require monthly or quarterly reporting, but many require a single report at the end of the grant term. Preparing a grant report involves combining financial data with program outcomes and distilling this information into a comprehensive narrative about what you accomplished with your funding. If you're tracking your grant in spreadsheets or software platforms that don't communicate with one another, this process can take from 1 day for each monthly report up to 3 days for an annual report for a total cost of $700 to $3,000. So let's do some math. Let's say you're looking for community foundation funding for a homeless shelter. You spend $720 looking through multiple grant databases to find a single foundation grant. Next, you spend $1,000 on a grant writer. It paid off because you're awarded $20,000. But then you spend $4,000 on the day-to-day management of the funding. At the end of the grant term, you spend $720 preparing a final grant report. Of that $20,000 you were awarded, you only have about $13,500 to spend on your organization's programming. Now, that may not sound terrible until you think of it in terms of homeless individuals not housed, not clothed, or not fed. So what can you do to lower the cost of your grants? Number 1, before deciding to write a grant proposal, do a simple cost-benefit analysis to determine if the grant is even worth applying for. Spoiler alert, a lot of grants aren't worth your time. Number 2, make sure to keep stellar records of your responses to questions that are commonly asked in a grant application to reduce unnecessary back and forth between you and your grant writer. Your grant writer will thank you, and you'll save money. Number 3, invest in grant management software to decrease the percentage of your grants spent on grant management. Number 4, track your grant finances, programs, and metrics in real time so you aren't forced to spend a bunch of time pulling information together for a final report. And there you have it. Grants can be expensive, but they're an excellent source of funding if you take the necessary steps to reduce the cost of finding, applying, managing, and reporting on them.